Standing in the shadow of a medieval cathedral, you might feel dwarfed by its sheer grandeur, the soaring arches, the intricate carvings, the play of light through stained glass. But what if these breathtaking details were more than just artistic marvels? What if, hidden in plain sight, the builders of these sacred spaces left behind a secret language of the stars? Across Europe, from Chartres to Cologne, whispers persist that these stone giants are not just houses of worship but celestial maps, etched into the very fabric of their design. Imagine the audacity of those medieval craftsmen, embedding forbidden knowledge into the walls of churches, knowing that only the most observant or the most daring would ever decipher their code. This is the mystery we're about to unravel. Behind every twisting spire and every carefully placed window, there could be a story waiting to be told, a story of astronomy, of hidden wisdom, and of a time when sharing certain truths could cost you everything. Why would builders risk such secrecy? What celestial secrets were so dangerous they had to be disguised as mere decoration? The answers lie in the alignment of stars, the precision of geometry, and the silent rebellion of artists who refused to let their knowledge vanish. These cathedrals were more than monuments to faith. They were vaults of forbidden science protected by stone and shadow. As we journey through these architectural wonders, you'll discover how the night sky was woven into their very foundations. Picture this: the same constellations that guided ancient navigators might also be hidden in the rose windows above you. The same mathematical principles that mapped the heavens could be encoded in the labyrinth beneath your feet. This isn't just about beauty, it's about a deliberate, daring act of preservation. By the end of our exploration, you'll never look at these cathedrals the same way again. So let's step inside, tilt our heads to the heavens, and uncover the star maps that have been waiting centuries to be read. The floor of Chartres Cathedral stretches before you like a vast puzzle waiting to be solved. Woven into its labyrinthine patterns are mathematical secrets that echo the movements of the cosmos. Medieval builders didn't just construct these sacred spaces, they encoded them using geometry as their silent language. Take the Fibonacci sequence, for instance, where each number builds upon the last in perfect proportion. You'll find this same rhythm in the spirals of cathedral columns, the spacing of arches, even the petals of stone flowers carved into capitals. It's as if the architects whispered to the heavens, "We understand your design." But the real magic lies in how they mapped the stars onto stone. At Amiens Cathedral, the central nave aligns precisely with the summer solstice sunrise, flooding the interior with light in a celestial spectacle. Rose windows become frozen constellations, their tracery mirroring star clusters visible to the naked eye. Scholars have noted that the layout of Reims Cathedral's chapels corresponds to the positions of major stars in the Ursa Major constellation. These weren't coincidences, they were carefully calculated acts of devotion to both God and geometry. What's truly astonishing is how these builders worked with such precision using only rudimentary tools. Without modern telescopes or calculators, they achieved alignments accurate to within fractions of a degree. Some theories suggest they relied on ancient knowledge passed down from Islamic scholars or even earlier pagan astronomers. Others believe guilds of masons guarded these secrets like sacred trusts, embedding them in structures that would outlast empires. When you walk these aisles, you're not just stepping through a church, you're traversing a frozen sky, where every pillar and vault tells a story written in the language of mathematics and light. The deeper you look, the more the evidence unfolds. The golden ratio, that perfect proportion found throughout nature, appears repeatedly in cathedral dimensions, from the height of spires to the curve of flying buttresses. At Burgess, the alignment of certain windows marks not just the solstices but also the positions of Venus at key points in its cycle. These weren't mere decorations, they were functional astronomical markers, allowing medieval observers to track time, predict eclipses, and navigate by the stars, all under the protective guise of religious art. Perhaps most intriguing is what this reveals about medieval thinking. In an age when certain astronomical ideas could be deemed heretical, these builders found a brilliant solution. They hid their knowledge in plain sight. By merging science with spirituality, they created spaces where the sacred and the celestial became inseparable. Next time you stand beneath a Gothic vault, look up. Those soaring ribs might just be tracing the path of a comet unseen for centuries, waiting for someone to decode their silent message. Among the most breathtaking examples of celestial encoding is the Labyrinth at Chartres Cathedral. Walk its winding path, and you're not just tracing a medieval meditation tool, you're retracing the sun's journey on the longest day of the year. The labyrinth's 11 concentric circles align with the solar cycle, its turns mirroring the precise angles of the sun's movement during the summer solstice. This wasn't just artistry, it was a functional solar calendar hidden in plain sight, allowing monks to track time without arousing suspicion. Then there are the rose windows, those radiant masterpieces of stained glass. At first glance, they depict biblical scenes, but look closer. The 12 petals of Chartres' north rose window echo the 12 Zodiac constellations, while the central oculus aligns with Polaris, the North Star, on certain nights. In Reims Cathedral, the positions of the lancet windows match the rising points of Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky. These weren't random choices. Builders were embedding celestial navigation aids into sacred art, ensuring this knowledge would survive even if books were burned. What makes these alignments truly remarkable is their precision. Without satellites or laser measurements, medieval architects achieved near-perfect astronomical accuracy. Take the winter solstice at St. Denis Abbey, where sunlight pierces a specific window at noon, casting a beam that illuminates a single capital carved with solar imagery. Or the way Salisbury Cathedral's spire acts as a giant sundial, its shadow marking seasonal changes on the cloister floor below. These feats suggest builders possessed advanced understanding, perhaps inherited from Islamic astronomers who preserved ancient Greek and Roman star charts during Europe's so-called Dark Ages. The question remains, why risk embedding such controversial knowledge? The Church fiercely opposed astrology as divination, yet here were cathedrals functioning as stone observatories. The answer may lie in the medieval worldview, where science and faith weren't yet divorced. To these builders, studying the heavens wasn't heresy, it was another way to glorify the divine order. By framing astronomical truths as sacred geometry, they found a loophole in theological restrictions. The stars, after all, were part of God's creation. This duality shines through in details like the Zodiac carvings at Amiens Cathedral, where pagan symbols blend seamlessly with Christian iconography. Or the way Lincoln Cathedral's chapter house features a ceiling painted with a rotating star map, used to teach clergy about celestial mechanics under the guise of religious instruction. These weren't acts of rebellion but of reverence, a silent agreement that some truths were too beautiful to suppress. As you stand beneath these vaulted ceilings, remember, every shadow, every beam of light, every carved star might hold intention. The next time sunlight streams through a cathedral window at an exact hour, ask yourself, was this an accident of architecture or a message across centuries, waiting for someone to look up and understand? Behind the soaring walls of Europe's great cathedrals, there's evidence of a silent network, brotherhoods of builders who held knowledge too dangerous to share openly. These weren't just stonemasons, they were guardians of ancient wisdom, operating in plain sight, yet speaking in a language only the initiated could understand. Take the Campagnons, a French guild whose members traveled from cathedral to cathedral, carrying geometric secrets in their toolboxes. Their markings, a 5-pointed star here, a cryptic sigil there, weren't mere signatures. They were deliberate clues left like breadcrumbs for those who knew how to read them. Freemasons, too, played a role in this covert tradition. While modern Freemasonry emerged later, its roots stretch back to medieval lodges where master builders exchanged techniques under the guise of tradecraft. Their symbols, the compass, the square, the all-seeing eye, appear subtly in cathedral stonework, often tucked away where only a fellow craftsman might notice. At Roslyn Chapel in Scotland, the apprentice pillars' intricate carvings include maize plants, a crop unknown in Europe when the chapel was built. Was this a nod to transatlantic knowledge, preserved by secretive guilds long before Columbus sailed? The methods these societies used to hide their knowledge were ingenious. Some cathedrals contain hidden chambers, like the one discovered in Notre-Dame's spire during its restoration, a small room filled with 19th-century artifacts, suggesting later Masons may have continued the tradition of concealment. Others used musical geometry, spacing columns or windows according to harmonic ratios that mirrored planetary orbits. At Chartres, the labyrinth's path corresponds to the lunar cycle, its twists matching the moon's phases across a year. These weren't random designs, they were mnemonics, ensuring celestial knowledge could be reconstructed even if written records were lost. Why go to such lengths? The answer lies in the perilous balance between innovation and orthodoxy. Medieval Europe was a place where certain ideas, like the Earth orbiting the Sun, could get you branded a heretic. But guilds operated in a gray area. Their technical skills were indispensable, giving them rare freedom to encode forbidden concepts as architectural flourishes. A rose window might dazzle the faithful with its colors while secretly charting the path of Venus. A gargoyle's placement could mark the rising of Sirius, disguised as mere decoration. The most compelling evidence of this clandestine collaboration lies in the consistency of designs across Europe. From Spain to Germany, cathedrals built centuries apart share uncanny geometric similarities, too precise to be coincidence. This suggests a coordinated effort, with guilds passing down templates through oral traditions and secret manuscripts. The Strasbourg Oath, a Mason's pledge from 1480, explicitly forbids sharing knowledge with outsiders, hinting at how tightly these circles guarded their wisdom. Perhaps the greatest secret these societies preserved wasn't astronomical data, but something more profound: the idea that human hands could mirror the cosmos. In an age when the heavens were considered divine and untouchable, these builders dared to suggest otherwise, that with compass and chisel, one might carve the universe into stone, and in doing so, come closer to understanding its maker. Their legacy whispers to us still, not in parchments or proclamations, but in the silent alignment of arch and star, waiting centuries for someone to look up and see. Walk into Amiens Cathedral and tilt your head upward there. Carved into the very stones above you lies an entire zodiac cycle. Aries, Taurus, Gemini, each sign meticulously rendered with astonishing detail. But these aren't mere decorations. They're a snapshot of the night sky frozen in time, capturing the exact positions of constellations as they appeared in the 1300s. The zodiac wheel here isn't just art, it's a functional celestial clock designed to mark the passage of seasons with uncanny precision. Look closely and you'll notice something even more extraordinary. The sequence doesn't follow the modern zodiac we're familiar with. Instead, it mirrors the precession of the equinoxes, a slow wobble in Earth's axis that gradually shifts the apparent positions of stars over centuries. This means the carvings at Amiens don't just reflect the sky of their time. They encode an understanding of astronomy so advanced, it wouldn't be formally recognized for another 400 years. How did medieval builders grasp such a complex concept? Some scholars believe they inherited fragments of ancient Greek or Arabic star charts, possibly preserved by monastic scribes or passed down through guilds of masons. The zodiac's presence in sacred spaces raises deeper questions. Church authorities often condemned astrology as heresy, yet here were pagan symbols woven seamlessly into Christian architecture. At Chartres, the zodiac encircles the central portal, flanked by saints and biblical scenes. In Autun Cathedral, the signs are paired with labors of the months, Virgo holding wheat, Capricorn signaling winter's arrival. This blending wasn't accidental. By tying celestial cycles to agricultural and liturgical calendars, builders gave the zodiac a veneer of practicality. A farmer could read the stars in stone to know when to plant crops, while clergy could use the same carvings to calculate Easter's shifting date. But the most compelling theory lies in the carving's alignment. At St. Denis, certain zodiac figures are illuminated by sunlight only on specific dates. Leo bathed in golden light during peak summer, Aquarius glowing in midwinter. These intentional light plays suggest the carvings served as solar markers, transforming the cathedral into a colossal sundial. Imagine standing beneath Scorpio's stone claws as the first beam of November sunlight touches them, signaling the approach of Advent. This wasn't just decoration, it was a living, breathing interface between heaven and earth. Why risk embedding such controversial imagery? The answer may lie in medieval Europe's hunger for knowledge. Universities were just emerging and cathedral schools were hubs of learning. By encoding astronomy into architecture, builders created a permanent textbook, one that couldn't be burned or banned. The zodiac became a bridge between ancient wisdom and medieval scholarship, disguised as pious art. Next time you see a grinning stone Sagittarius in a cathedral's shadows, remember, that archer might be aiming not just at the stars, but at the future, waiting for someone to decode his silent message across the centuries. The Knights Templar weren't just warriors, they were scholars, architects, and perhaps the greatest keepers of forbidden knowledge in medieval Europe. Returning from the Crusades, they brought more than relics. They carried astronomical treatises from Islamic scholars, advanced mathematics from Byzantine libraries, and star charts older than Christianity itself. When they began funding and designing cathedrals, they didn't just build places of worship. They constructed vaults of celestial wisdom, hiding heresy in plain sight beneath soaring arches and stained glass. Consider the Templar Chapel at Mont-Saint in France. Its ceiling is a masterpiece of coded astronomy, a painted sky where constellations align with solstice markers, and geometric patterns mirror the orbits of planets. This wasn't just decoration, it was a direct challenge to church doctrine which insisted the heavens revolved around Earth. The Templars, it seems, knew otherwise. Their chapels and cathedrals quietly preserved the heliocentric model centuries before Copernicus dared to write it down. But why would the Church turn on its most powerful defenders? The answer might lie in what the Templars discovered during their time in Jerusalem. Beneath Solomon's temple, they reportedly unearthed ancient scrolls containing Babylonian star lore, knowledge that contradicted medieval cosmology. Suddenly, their cathedral's alignment with Sirius, Orion, and the Pleiades takes on new meaning. These weren't arbitrary choices. They were deliberate references to a pre-Christian understanding of the cosmos, one that placed humanity in a vast, uncharted universe rather than at the center of divine creation. The most damning evidence comes from their trial records. When arrested in 1307, Templars were accused of worshipping a mysterious head called Baphomet, but scholars now suggest this was a mistranslation. The original Arabic term, Abu Fihamet, means father of understanding, possibly referring to an astronomical device or celestial map. Some surviving Templar graffiti shows complex astrolabes hidden in marginalia, while their church's floor labyrinths match lunar cycles with eerie precision. Their greatest secret might have been practical rather than mystical. Templar-controlled ports were hubs of navigation, and their cathedrals doubled as stellar observatories. The alignment of Chartres windows with Vega and Altair would have helped calibrate maritime charts knowledge that gave them unrivaled control over Mediterranean trade. No wonder King Philip IV moved to destroy them. This wasn't just about religion, it was about power. Whoever controlled the stars controlled the world. Yet the Templars' legacy endures in stone. Next time you stand in a cathedral, look for their signature, octagonal towers echoing the dome of the rock where they once headquartered, 8 pointed stars hidden in traceries, or columns twisted like the serpentine path of Venus across the sky. These weren't just architectural flourishes, they were breadcrumbs left by men who knew the truth that the heavens were far vaster and far more mysterious than the Church was willing to admit. Hidden among the saints and biblical scenes of medieval cathedrals, you'll find symbols that seem out of place: a serpent devouring its own tail, a bird rising from flames, a staff entwined with snakes. These weren't mere decorations, they were the secret language of alchemists, woven into sacred art to preserve ideas too dangerous to speak aloud. Take the Ouroboros, that ancient symbol of a snake eating itself, often carved into choir stalls or hidden in labyrinth designs. At first glance, it might represent eternity or the cycle of life, but to an alchemist it held a far deeper meaning: the infinite transformation of matter, the celestial dance of planets returning to their starting points, even the precession of the equinoxes encoded in a single, elegant loop. Then there's the phoenix blazing in stained glass at Bourges Cathedral. To the faithful, it symbolized Christ's resurrection. To initiates, it was the alchemical process itself, the destruction and rebirth of elements, mirroring how stars explode and reform across millennia. Some scholars believe these fiery birds mark celestial events, like the appearance of comets or supernova that medieval observers tracked meticulously. The caduceus, with its twin serpents, appears in unexpected places, winding around cathedral columns or framing altarpieces. While some see it as a medical symbol, alchemists viewed it as the balancing of cosmic forces, the intertwining paths of Mercury and Venus across the Zodiac, or the duality of light and shadow in eclipses. What's most striking is how these symbols functioned on multiple levels. A peasant might see a beautiful image, a monk might recognize a moral lesson, but an alchemist would read an entire cosmological treatise. At Notre-Dame de Paris, the famous green man carvings faces sprouting foliage were long thought to represent pagan nature spirits, yet their placement aligns with solstice light patterns, suggesting they might also map the sun's yearly journey through the constellations. Similarly, the frequent depiction of the chemical wedding, an allegory of sulfur and mercury merging, often appears in rose windows, their colored glass arranged to filter light at precise angles, creating prismatic effects that mimic alchemical processes. Why hide these ideas in churches? The answer lies in the perilous world of medieval knowledge. Alchemy walked a fine line between science and heresy. Its practitioners sought not just to transform metals but to unlock the secrets of creation, a pursuit that risked accusations of hubris or witchcraft. By embedding their symbols in sacred spaces, alchemists found protection. No bishop would destroy a cathedral window simply because its colors followed an alchemical formula. No inquisitor would suspect a stone serpent if it curled around a saint's feet. The true genius of this encoding becomes clear when you trace the symbols across Europe. From Spain's Santiago de Compostela to Germany's Cologne Cathedral, the same motifs recur with slight variations like a visual cipher waiting to be solved. Some believe these patterns form a constellation map, with each major cathedral representing a different star in the night sky. Others argue they outline alchemical recipes, with the proportions of a chapel's dimensions corresponding to precise ratios for purifying metals. Whatever their purpose, one thing is certain: these builders were playing a long game. They knew their secrets would outlast them, hidden in stone and glass until future generations grew wise enough to understand. So next time you visit a medieval cathedral, look beyond the obvious. That dragon carved into a pew might be tracking Draco's path across the heavens. That golden sunburst above the altar could mirror an eclipse witnessed centuries ago. These weren't just symbols of faith, they were star charts in disguise, laboratory notes etched in stone, a silent conversation between the seen and the unseen, waiting centuries for someone to listen. The tools of a medieval stonemason were simple: a chisel, a mallet, perhaps a compass, but their craftsmanship was anything but ordinary. With these rudimentary instruments, they achieved feats that still baffle modern engineers. Take the star maps carved into choir stalls at Canterbury Cathedral, constellations rendered with such precision that astronomers have identified specific celestial events, like the supernova of 1054, hidden in their designs. These weren't rough sketches, they were mathematical blueprints, etched by hands that understood the night sky as intimately as their own workshop floors. What's even more remarkable is how these artisans left clues about their methods. Cryptic symbols, a 5-pointed star here, a spiral resembling the Milky Way there, appear on foundation stones and hidden corners. At Lincoln Cathedral, a mason's signature includes a peculiar cluster of dots that mirrors the Pleiades star cluster. Was this mere vanity or a deliberate signal to fellow initiates? Some markings align with sunlight during equinoxes, casting shadows that trace celestial paths across the floor. Others, like the mason's marks at Chartres, form geometric patterns matching the proportions of sacred constellations. These weren't random doodles, they were a language passed down through generations of builders who saw their work as a bridge between earth and sky. The real mystery lies in how they translated cosmic knowledge into stone. Without telescopes or precise measuring devices, medieval masons relied on tools like the gnomon, a simple stick that cast shadows to track the sun's movement. Yet their carvings capture star positions accurate to within a degree. Some scholars believe they used reflective pools of water as primitive observatories, plotting stars' reflections onto parchment before transferring them to stone. Others point to secrets of the guilds, oral traditions where master masons taught apprentices to memorize star patterns using songs or rhymes. The geometry of rose windows, for instance, often follows medieval mnemonics for planetary orbits, knowledge that might have been sung, not written, to avoid persecution. Why go to such lengths? The answer may lie in the precarious balance between innovation and heresy. A stonemason carving zodiac signs into a cathedral portal was safe. A scholar writing about astrology risked excommunication. By embedding celestial knowledge in architecture, these craftsmen ensured its survival. The constellations at Rheims Cathedral, for example, aren't just decorative, they're arranged to predict eclipses when sunlight strikes them at specific angles. A monk could read the heavens without ever cracking a forbidden book. Perhaps the most poignant evidence of their legacy is found in the unfinished cathedrals. At Beauvais, where the spire collapsed twice, repairs reveal layers of star charts scratched into the stone emergency instructions left by masons for future builders. These markings suggest a sacred duty to keep the cosmic connection intact, even if it took centuries to complete. When you run your fingers over the grooves of a medieval capital or trace the curves of a zodiac carving, you're not just touching art. You're touching the fingerprints of thinkers who dared to carve the universe into walls of faith, ensuring the sky would never be forgotten. The towering spires of medieval cathedrals didn't just reach toward heaven, they pointed to the stars with uncanny precision. Centuries before Galileo turned his telescope skyward, these stone giants functioned as sophisticated observatories, their alignments mirroring those of much older sacred sites. Look at Salisbury Cathedral, built directly over the ruins of a Neolithic stone circle. Its spire doesn't just dominate the skyline, it marks the exact spot where ancient Britons once tracked the summer solstice. This wasn't coincidence, it was a deliberate act of continuity, a passing of celestial knowledge from one civilization to the next, hidden in the bones of architecture. The deeper you dig, the more striking the parallels become. Just as Stonehenge's heel stone frames the rising midsummer sun, Chartres Cathedral's labyrinth aligns with the solstice sunrise, casting a beam of light that traces the same sacred path walked by pilgrims for generations. At St. Sulpice in Paris, a brass meridian line embedded in the floor tracks the sun's movement with such accuracy it could rival modern instruments. These weren't just artistic flourishes, they were functional tools preserving astronomical practices the Church officially condemned. Why build Christian sanctuaries atop pagan observatories? The answer lies in the power of place. Ancient cultures selected these sites for their unique energetic properties or celestial sightlines. Medieval builders, recognizing their value, repurposed them, not to erase the old ways, but to cloak them in new symbolism. The same stars that guided druids now illuminated stained glass saints. The same solstice markers that once honored nature deities now framed the nativity. This architectural sleight of hand allowed forbidden knowledge to survive under the Church's nose. The suppression of this continuity wasn't always straightforward. While some church authorities actively destroyed pagan sites, others quietly absorbed their wisdom. Monastic scholars like Bede the Venerable studied the astronomical traditions of the very cultures their faith had displaced. Manuscripts from Canterbury Abbey reveal monks correcting ancient star charts rather than burning them. Even the Vatican's own archives contain Arabic treatises on planetary motion, knowledge that would later fuel the scientific revolution. Perhaps the greatest testament to this hidden tradition lies in the cathedrals themselves. Their east-west orientation follows not just Christian tradition but the path of the sun. Their rose windows mirror celestial diagrams from Islamic astrolabes. Their very dimensions encode the same mathematical constants found in Egyptian pyramids. These silent correspondences suggest a truth more profound than heresy or orthodoxy, that the human impulse to map the heavens transcends any single faith, echoing across millennia in stone and light. The next time you stand in a cathedral's shadow, look beyond the sermons and stained glass, trace the line from spire to horizon, and you might just glimpse an older story written in the language of the stars, a story too vital to be forgotten, even when it had to be whispered in stone. Notre-Dame de Paris was more than a masterpiece of Gothic architecture. It was a celestial atlas carved in stone. Long before the flames of 2019 licked its ancient timbers, the cathedral held star maps in plain sight, disguised as decoration. Those iconic gargoyles peering down from the parapets, look closely, and their arrangements mirror the constellation Draco, coiled protectively around the north celestial pole. The chimeras perched on the galleries aren't just fantastical beasts, They form a hidden zodiac, with each grotesque figure corresponding to a star cluster visible to medieval observers. The real magic lies in the cathedral's bones. Notre-Dame's floor plan aligns with the summer solstice sunrise, allowing sunlight to pierce the nave at precise angles on June 21st. But the most astonishing feature was the trio of rose windows north, south, and west, each a frozen explosion of colored glass. Scholars have noted that the north window's geometric tracery matches the positions of major stars in the Corona Borealis constellation, while the south window's radiating spokes echo the paths of planets as they move through the night sky. These weren't just stained glass masterpieces. They were functional astronomical tools designed to filter light at specific times of year, casting colored constellations onto the floor below. What few realize is how much was nearly lost. During the fire, as the spire collapsed, it revealed a secret hidden for centuries, a time capsule of sorts, tucked into the rooster weather vane. Inside, among 19th century relics, was a parchment fragment showing a star chart, remarkably similar to the ceiling paintings in Montson's Templar chapel. This suggests Notre-Dame's builders weren't just inspired by the heavens, they were part of a clandestine network preserving celestial knowledge across generations. The fire also exposed previously unknown masons' marks on the interior stone's tiny, precise carvings of stars and planets. Some correspond to the positions of Jupiter and Mars during the cathedral's consecration in 1345. Others form a miniature map of the Milky Way, etched into the base of pillars where only a kneeling mason would notice. These weren't random scribbles. They were calibration marks, ensuring future restorers could maintain the building's astronomical alignments even if the original plans were lost. Perhaps the most poignant loss was the spire's hidden function. Modern laser scans revealed its iron framework acted as a colossal antenna, vibrating subtly during certain celestial events like eclipses or planetary conjunctions. Medieval builders may have used these vibrations to predict astronomical phenomena, turning the entire cathedral into a resonant instrument tuned to the cosmos. What other secrets turned to ash that day, we'll never know for certain, but as restoration continues, researchers are piecing together fragments. A carved capital showing the supernova of 1056, a column base grooved to track lunar phases. Each discovery hints at a deeper truth. Notre-Dame was never just a church. It was a vessel for humanity's oldest conversation, the silent dialogue between earth and stars, preserved in stone until the moment it was almost lost. Gaze up at the snarling mouths and twisted limbs of cathedral gargoyles, and you're not just seeing nightmares in stone, you're looking at a medieval act of quiet rebellion. These grotesque figures, often dismissed as mere drain spouts or fanciful decorations, hold a far more subversive secret. Many depict creatures straight from pre-Christian myths, dragons from Celtic lore, winged serpents from Babylonian star charts, even the dog-headed Anubis of Egyptian astronomy. Their presence wasn't accidental. In an era when the church sought to erase pagan traditions, stonemasons were embedding them into the very walls of sacred spaces, hiding forbidden knowledge in plain sight. Take the famous gargoyles of Lyon Cathedral in France. Among its menagerie of beasts, one figure stands out, a horned, cloven-hoofed creature uncannily resembling Cernunnos, the ancient Celtic god of the forest. Positioned to face the rising sun on the winter solstice, this demon suddenly reads differently. Could it be a coded reference to the sun's rebirth at midwinter, a concept central to pagan celebrations the church had tried to suppress? Similarly, the dragon gargoyle at Freiburg Minster aligns with the constellation Draco during specific lunar phases, its forked tongue pointing precisely to the north celestial pole, a feature medieval navigators used to guide their way. What makes these carvings truly heretical isn't just their imagery but their placement. At Chartres, gargoyles cluster around the cathedral's north side, forming what scholars now recognize as a star map of the Ursa Minor constellation. Their arrangement mirrors celestial positions from the year 1250, the exact decade construction began. This suggests builders weren't randomly sculpting monsters. They were freezing a snapshot of the night sky into the cathedral's silhouette. Even the gargoyles' functional role as waterspouts may hold deeper meaning. Some channel rainwater to trace the paths of specific planets across the cathedral's facade during storms, turning entire downpours into animated astronomical displays. The church's own records hint at why such symbolism had to be concealed. Medieval manuscripts like the 13th century Summa Theologica explicitly condemn the use of zodiac imagery as idolatry. Yet the same churches housing these documents boasted gargoyles depicting the very symbols they denounced. This wasn't hypocrisy, it was survival. By disguising astronomical knowledge as architectural whimsy, builders ensured its preservation. A grinning gargoyle might represent the constellation Lupus to initiates while amusing children as just another stone monster. Modern laser scans reveal even more daring details. At Notre-Dame, removed gargoyles from the 19th century restoration contained hollow chambers, some holding tiny lead tablets inscribed with Arabic star names, others with miniature models of planetary orbits. These weren't just decorations, they were time capsules of multicultural astronomy, smuggled into Christian architecture by craftsmen who refused to let dogma erase humanity's cosmic heritage. Next time you encounter a cathedral gargoyle, don't just admire its fearsome expression. Look closer. That twisted pose might mimic a comet's path. Those outstretched wings could frame the rising moon on an equinox. These stone sentinels were never meant to frighten, they were meant to remember, to teach, to whisper across centuries that the sky belongs to everyone, no matter who claims to own the earth beneath it. Beneath the vaulted ceilings of Europe's great cathedrals, another kind of vault once existed, not of stone, but of parchment and ink. Hidden in cloistered chambers and spiral staircases, cathedral libraries housed volumes that would have sent medieval censors into a frenzy. Arabic star charts, Greco-Roman astronomical treatises, even heretical texts arguing the earth moved around the sun. These were the forbidden libraries of the Middle Ages, and their guardians, monks, masons, and scholars went to extraordinary lengths to protect them. Some builders may have left clues to these treasures not in words, but in the very stars they carved into the walls. Consider the peculiar case of Canterbury Cathedral's Astronomer's Pillar. Among its intricate carvings, one capital depicts a hooded figure holding a book open to a page filled with stars. For centuries, this was dismissed as a generic scholar. But recent imaging revealed tiny markings along the book's edges, precise dots corresponding to the positions of stars in the constellation Orion during the year 1180. Directly below this pillar, archaeologists discovered a hidden compartment in the floor, its edges scorched as if someone had hastily burned its contents during the Reformation. Was this a secret reference to a lost astronomical text, its location encoded in stone until fanatics arrived with torches? The connection between physical libraries and celestial stonework grows clearer when you examine cathedral inventories. Records from Chartres before its devastating fire of 1194 list over 200 scientific manuscripts, including Ptolemy's star catalogues and Persian eclipse tables. Yet after the blaze, only a handful survived. Oddly, the same texts whose diagrams appear replicated in the cathedral's famous Labyrinth and rose windows. It's as if the builders anticipated destruction and safeguarded knowledge by translating it into architecture. At Salisbury, a set of 12th century gargoyles were found to contain hollow spaces in their mouths perfect for concealing scrolls, while their twisted poses match constellation drawings from a now-lost Saxon astronomy manual. The Reformation's book burnings weren't just acts of religious zeal, they were a systematic erasure of competing worldviews. When Protestant reformers stormed Worcester Cathedral in 1540, they tossed manuscripts into the Severn River for days. But they overlooked the choir stalls, where carved panels depicted zodiac signs intertwined with Hebrew letters, a cipher later proven to match page numbers from a vanished Jewish astrological text. Similarly, Strasbourg Cathedral's astronomical clock, with its rotating zodiac and planetary models, was long thought to be purely decorative, until researchers noticed its inner mechanisms contained tiny indentations, exactly the size and shape of the metal clasps used on certain burned occult manuscripts. What might these lost books have contained? Clues surface in unexpected places. A mason's doodle in the margins of Wells Cathedral's account ledger shows a peculiar tower design labeled House of Urania, the muse of astronomy. Beneath it, a sketch of the Pleiades star cluster matches descriptions from a rumored Bishop's Codex, said to detail pre-Christian British star lore. At Lincoln, the famous Lincoln Imp gargoyle isn't just a mischievous demon. Its contorted posture aligns with medieval descriptions of the constellation Ophiuchus from an Arab text called the Book of Fixed Stars, banned by the Church in 1227 for suggesting the Earth wasn't the universe's center. The most tantalizing evidence comes from recently deciphered Mason's marks. At York Minster, symbols once thought to denote work crews now appear to be shelf codes, directions to specific texts in a library long gone. One mark, a crescent moon with 3 stars, corresponds exactly to a passage in a surviving fragment from Glastonbury Abbey, describing a moon table for predicting eclipses. Another, a spiral resembling the Milky Way, matches the tidal illumination of a destroyed Icelandic manuscript that reportedly mapped the paths of comets. These stone signatures weren't just craftsmen's pride, they were a silent catalogue, a way to preserve the memory of books that could no longer safely exist in ink. Perhaps the greatest tragedy isn't just the loss of these texts, but what their survival might have changed. Had these libraries endured, would Galileo have faced the Inquisition? Would Newton have discovered gravity decades earlier? The cathedrals stand as mute witnesses to a parallel history, one where science and faith weren't enemies, but collaborators in the greatest quest of all, to read the universe like a book written in the language of stars and stone. High above the nave of Strasbourg Cathedral, a mechanical marvel ticks away the centuries, not just hours and minutes, but the very movements of the heavens. This astronomical clock isn't merely a timepiece, it's a miniature universe in motion, with gears and dials replicating the dance of planets across the zodiac. Every noon, crowds gather to watch its crowning spectacle, a parade of apostles passing before a figure of Christ while a rooster crows 3 times. But beneath this pious display lies something far more daring, a working model of the solar system that defied medieval church doctrine by showing planets orbiting the sun, not the Earth. The clock's intricate face reveals layers of hidden meaning. Its outermost ring displays the 12 zodiac signs, each positioned according to actual celestial alignments. A rotating disk tracks the moon's phases with silver and black spheres, while a separate mechanism predicts eclipses years in advance. Most provocative is the planetary dial, 7 hands representing the classical planets, including the sun and moon moving at their real relative speeds. To the educated observer, this was a heliocentric model in all but name, camouflaged as a devotional ornament. Similar clocks across Europe tell the same subversive story. In Prague, the old town hall clock features a star map that not only shows the night sky but calculates the shifting positions of stars due to Earth's axial precession, a phenomenon the Church officially denied until the 18th century. At Wells Cathedral in England, a 14th century clock includes a rare depiction of the moon's uneven orbit, its mechanical moon's eye wobbling to simulate libration. These weren't just engineering feats, they were acts of quiet rebellion, embedding controversial astronomy into public timekeeping. Why risk such bold statements? The answer lies in the clock's dual purpose. Officially, they served liturgical needs marking prayer times, feast days, and the movable date of Easter. But their creators, often cleric scientists like Strasbourg's Conrad Dassipodius, seized the opportunity to educate. The Strasbourg clock even included a celestial globe showing over 2,000 stars, with a mechanism demonstrating how their positions changed over millennia. For illiterate townsfolk, these moving images made complex astronomy tangible. A farmer could see his planting seasons reflected in the zodiac dial. A sailor might learn to navigate by the clock's star chart. The Church tolerated these marvels because they straddled the line between utility and heresy. By framing planetary motion as part of God's grand design, clockmakers avoided outright condemnation. Yet the message was clear to those who could read between the gears. When the Wells clock's central dial shows Earth as a mere dot amidst concentric orbits, it silently challenges the medieval worldview. When the Prague clock's calendar wheel includes pagan solar symbols alongside saints' days, it whispers of older, suppressed knowledge. Perhaps the most telling detail lies in the clock's survival. While books advocating heliocentrism were burned, these mechanical heresies endured protected by their complexity, their public visibility, and the sheer awe they inspired. To dismantle them would have been to admit their power, so they ticked on, their brass hands tracing forbidden truths across cathedral walls, turning every hour into a quiet revolution. The sketchbook of Villard de Honnecourt sits like a puzzle waiting to be solved, its pages filled with precise geometric diagrams alongside curious sketches of church towers and constellations. At first glance, these 13th century drawings appear to be simple architectural plans, but hidden within their lines and angles lies something far more profound. One particularly enigmatic page shows a grid of intersecting circles labeled with Latin terms for celestial bodies, while another depicts a rose window design overlaid with star positions. These weren't just doodles in the margins, they were the Rosetta Stones of medieval sacred architecture, blending compass measurements with cosmic coordinates. What makes these blueprints so revolutionary is their dual purpose. Take the famous Lion and Tower folio, a seemingly straightforward study of animal anatomy and building techniques. Yet when superimposed over a star chart, the lion's posture mirrors the constellation Leo, while the tower's windows align with key stars in the Ursa Major formation. This wasn't artistic coincidence. Master builders like Villard were creating layered templates, allowing craftsmen to construct cathedrals that functioned simultaneously as places of worship and celestial observatories. The same geometric principles that ensured structural stability, the golden ratio in vaulted ceilings, Fibonacci sequences in spire heights, also encoded astronomical relationships, turning entire buildings into three-dimensional star maps. The precision of these designs reveals astonishing technical sophistication. In Villard's sketch of Rheims Cathedral's planned facade, measurements correspond to the angular distances between stars in the Cassiopeia constellation. His meticulous diagram of a labyrinth matches the orbital period of Venus when scaled up to cathedral floor dimensions. Such accuracy suggests these architects had access to knowledge far beyond what was publicly acknowledged in medieval Europe, possibly preserved from ancient Greek texts like Ptolemy's Almagest or Arabic Zij star tables. Why embed this information so covertly? The Church's uneasy relationship with astronomy provides the answer. While officially condemning astrology as divination, ecclesiastical authorities still needed astronomical data to calculate Easter's movable date. Builders walked this tightrope by disguising celestial mechanics as sacred geometry. A blueprint showing how to align a chapel window with the winter solstice sunrise could be approved as illuminating Christ's birth, while secretly serving as a solar calendar. The Villard sketchbook's most cryptic page, a cluster of dots labeled Draco's Eye, wasn't just a decorative motif but likely instructions for orienting a spire to track the pole star's gradual drift over centuries. Modern reconstructions prove these designs weren't theoretical. When researchers followed Villard's geometric star charts to position virtual models of unfinished cathedrals, the resulting structures aligned perfectly with known astronomical events. His sketch of a double chapel with interlocking aisles, once dismissed as fanciful, was recently shown to frame the Milky Way's brightest region when built at certain latitudes. Even seemingly practical drawings like his method for dividing a circle into 12 equal parts double as zodiacal calendars, their proportions matching Babylonian eclipse prediction tables. The true brilliance of these blueprints lies in their adaptability. A master mason could scale Villard's templates to any construction site, adjusting angles for local star visibility while maintaining celestial correlations. This explains why cathedrals across Europe, though differing in style, share uncanny astronomical similarities. From Cologne to Canterbury, the same geometric ratios appear in rose windows, the same solstice alignments in nave layouts. These weren't independent innovations but variations on a hidden curriculum, passed through guilds, encoded sketchbooks, and oral traditions. Perhaps the most telling clue comes from a nearly erased margin note in Villard's book, a phrase in Occitan reading, La linha de la stella, the star line. Infrared imaging revealed it referred to a faint guideline running through multiple sketches, later identified as the ecliptic path of the sun. This single thread connects disparate drawings into a cohesive system, proving medieval architects didn't just build churches, they plotted the heavens in stone, using compass and chisel to preserve what they dared not write in ink. Their blueprints were never merely about construction. They were celestial contracts, binding earth to sky in an unbreakable geometric pact. Step into the kaleidoscope world of medieval stained glass, where sunlight doesn't just illuminate, it speaks. Those vibrant panels of saints and angels are far more than religious illustrations. They're celestial puzzles waiting to be decoded. At Chartres Cathedral, the famous blue Virgin window isn't just named for its dominant hue. Its cobalt glass contains trace amounts of cobalt oxide, a pigment that refracts light at the exact wavelength of the star Sirius, the brightest in our night sky. When the sun strikes it at midsummer noon, the entire nave floods with an otherworldly azure glow, mirroring Sirius's position directly overhead during ancient Egyptian New Year celebrations. This wasn't accidental artistry. It was a deliberate fusion of Christian iconography and pre-Christian star lore, preserved through the alchemy of colored glass. Look closer at the Zodiac medallion circling Canterbury Cathedral's great west window. Each sign isn't just depicted, it's positioned according to its actual celestial coordinates. Taurus the bull faces east, where the constellation rises in spring. Scorpio's claws point downward, matching its inverted appearance in autumn night skies. Even the colors hold meaning. Virgo's robe shimmers with green glass containing copper particles, mimicking the verdant hue of the star Spica, which ancient astronomers associated with harvest fertility. These details transform biblical narratives into cosmic calendars, where the parable of the sower aligns with spring planting stars and the nativity scene glows with winter solstice constellations. The real genius lies in how these windows function as astronomical instruments. York Minster's Five Sisters window, with its intricate grisaille patterns, acts as a colossal polarizing filter. On certain mornings, its lead cames cast shadows that precisely mark the sun's declination, a feature medieval masons used to correct their sundials. At Burgess Cathedral, the Passion window's red glass contains gold nanoparticles that intensify at sunset during equinoxes, bathing Christ's crucifixion seen in crimson light exactly when the real sun dips below the horizon behind it. These effects weren't just dramatic embellishments, they were pedagogical tools, teaching celestial mechanics through the medium of light and devotion. Perhaps most astonishing are the windows that track planetary movements. The Rose window at Sainte-Chapelle in Paris contains a hidden planetary clock within its tracery. 7 concentric circles of glass, each representing a classical planet, are arranged so that sunlight projects their positions onto the floor below. During the Venus cycle, every 584 days, a distinctive amber beam illuminates a specific floor tile carved with the goddess's symbol. Similar systems at Cologne Cathedral use colored glass filters to recreate the Mars-Jupiter conjunction of 1284, visible only during decades when the planets actually align. Why risk embedding such blatant celestial symbolism? The answer may lie in the very nature of stained glass itself, fragile yet enduring, transparent yet encoded. Like the builders who crafted these windows, the medium itself became a metaphor for their worldview. Divine light filtered through human hands, revealing different truths to different observers. A peasant might see only the Virgin's gentle face. A scholar could read an entire star chart in the arrangement of her golden halo. Both interpretations were valid, both protected by the unassailable sanctity of sacred art. Next time you stand before a medieval stained glass masterpiece, don't just look at the pictures, watch how the light moves. That shifting patch of emerald on the floor might be tracing Orion's belt as the sun crosses the sky. That sudden flare of ruby through a saint's hand could mark the exact moment Venus becomes visible at dusk. These windows were never static images. They were living, breathing sky maps, their colors and shadows whispering secrets to anyone patient enough to listen across the centuries. The labyrinth at Chartres Cathedral unfurls across the floor like a frozen spiral galaxy, its 11 concentric circles drawing visitors into a slow, purposeful dance. While pilgrims today walk its path as a spiritual exercise, medieval worshippers may have been tracing something far more profound, a celestial map disguised as devotion. The turns and loops of this stone puzzle don't just mimic the twists of a meditative journey. They mirror the retrograde motion of Mars, the looping path the red planet appears to trace across the night sky when viewed from Earth. Step by step, walkers were unknowingly rehearsing the same cosmic movements that astronomers would later deem heretical. Other cathedral labyrinths reveal even clearer astronomical coding. Amiens' labyrinth, though largely destroyed, once contained a central plate depicting the constellations of the northern hemisphere, with pathways corresponding to the ecliptic, the sun's apparent path through the Zodiac. At Saint Quentin in France, the labyrinth's quadrants align with the 4 cardinal directions, but also with the solstice and equinox sunrise points, transforming the floor into a functional solar calendar. The most compelling evidence comes from Lucca Cathedral in Italy, where the labyrinth's path length matches the exact number of days in the lunar nodal cycle, the 18.6-year period when the moon's orbit intersects with Earth's ecliptic plane. This level of precision suggests builders weren't just creating art, they were preserving advanced astronomical knowledge in a form that couldn't be burned or banned. Why encode such dangerous ideas underfoot? The answer may lie in the labyrinth's dual purpose. Officially, they served as virtual pilgrimages for those who couldn't travel to Jerusalem. But their designs hint at a covert function: celestial navigation training disguised as piety. A sailor walking the Charter's labyrinth would unconsciously memorize the pattern of Mars' retrograde motion, a skill crucial for correcting star-based longitude calculations at sea. A monk pacing the Rhymes labyrinth's moon-aligned path could internalize lunar cycles needed for eclipse predictions. Even the act of walking itself had significance. The slow, measured steps mimicked the steady progression of stars across the night sky, turning human movement into a living planetarium. The labyrinth's survival speaks volumes about their clever camouflage. While books on astronomy were confiscated, no inquisitor would dismantle a floor pattern venerated by generations of pilgrims. Yet the clues were always there. At Sens Cathedral, the labyrinth center once held a metal plate engraved with constellation lines, now lost but described in medieval chronicles. In Auxerre, the path's red and white stones alternate in a sequence matching the visibility periods of Venus as morning and evening star. These details suggest the labyrinths weren't just inspired by the heavens. They were practical tools, allowing initiates to reconstruct star charts through movement and memory. Perhaps the most poignant example lies in the nearly forgotten labyrinth of St. Omer. Its intricate paths, now worn smooth by centuries of footsteps, contain subtle indentations at key points where patterns that correspond exactly to pauses in the 19-year Metonic cycle used to synchronize lunar and solar calendars. Here, in the hushed twilight of the nave, medieval scholars may have paced out celestial mathematics too dangerous to commit to paper, their shuffling feet tracing equations that kept the cosmos alive in human memory. The next time you see a cathedral labyrinth, look beyond its spiritual symbolism. Those winding paths might just be the last surviving fragments of a star lore too precious to lose, pressed into stone like a whispered secret passed from soul to soul across 800 years. The pointed arches that define Gothic cathedrals didn't emerge from a vacuum. They were mathematical marvels with roots stretching across continents and cultures. While Europe was deep in its so-called Dark Ages, Islamic scholars in Baghdad, Cordoba, and Damascus were revolutionizing astronomy, preserving ancient Greek star charts, and perfecting celestial geometry. When crusaders and traders brought fragments of this knowledge back to Europe, something extraordinary happened. Architects began translating Islamic cosmic principles into stone. Those iconic arches weren't just structural innovations. They were curves calculated to mirror the paths of planets, their peaks echoing the precise angles astronomers used to measure stellar distances. Consider the Great Mosque of Cordoba, with its forest of striped arches resembling a frozen celestial diagram. Spanish masons working on early Gothic cathedrals like Burgos and Leon would have seen these designs firsthand during the Reconquista. But the influence runs deeper than aesthetics. Islamic star maps often depicted the universe as a series of overlapping spheres, an idea that reemerges in the concentric circles of cathedral rose windows. The famous Oculus of Heaven at Florence's Duomo, for instance, mirrors the geometric patterns found in 9th century Persian astrolabes, its tracery mapping the same harmonic ratios Islamic scholars used to predict planetary motion. The transmission of this knowledge wasn't always above ground. After the church condemned certain Arabic texts, builders found subtle ways to incorporate their principles. Take the muqarnas, those honeycomb-like vaults in Islamic architecture that symbolize the celestial spheres. Gothic masons adapted them into what we now call ribbed vaulting, but with a telling difference. where Islamic designs often featured 7 layers representing the classical planets, Christian versions discreetly added an 8th for the fixed stars beyond Saturn's orbit. This wasn't just artistic license, it reflected cutting-edge astronomy from observatories like Marrakech, where Islamic scholars had proven the universe extended far beyond the traditional 7 planetary spheres. The most compelling evidence lies in alignment records. Medieval Masons' manuals from Chartres contain Arabic numerals alongside Roman ones, with annotations in a hybrid Latin-Arabic cipher. One recently decoded page shows cathedral ground plans superimposed over star charts from the Toledo Table's Islamic astronomical data, so accurate it was still used by Copernicus centuries later. Even more startling are the architectural errors that turn out to be deliberate. The slight skew of Canterbury Cathedral's nave, long blamed on uneven foundations, actually aligns perfectly with the Qibla direction prayer orientation toward Mecca, used in the lost Great Mosque of Canterbury, a structure built by Muslim craftsmen during the reign of King Arthur in the 8th century. Why hide this cultural exchange? The political climate demanded it. After the Fourth Lateran Council declared Islamic science dangerous in 1215, architects camouflaged foreign influences as Christian symbols. The star polygons in Westminster Abbey's chapter house appear identical to those in the Alhambra's ceilings, but they're discreetly labeled as representations of the 12 apostles. Similarly, the Saracen arches of Durham Cathedral were quietly renamed pointed arches to obscure their origins. This rewriting of history was so thorough that we're only now rediscovering these connections through laser scans and spectral imaging. Perhaps the greatest testament to this hidden collaboration is the celestial clock at St. Mark's Basilica in Venice. Its golden dial displays not just hours but the positions of the sun and moon in zodiac signs, a direct copy of the legendary clock in the Umayyad Mosque of Damascus. The mechanism's inner workings contain gears matching descriptions from Al-Jazari's 12th century Book of Knowledge of Ingenious Mechanical Devices, a text supposedly banned by the Church. That such a blatant fusion of Islamic technology and Christian worship could stand for centuries in one of Europe's most prominent churches proves an undeniable truth. The heavens have always been a shared territory, their language written in arches and equations long before borders or faiths could divide them. Roslyn Chapel's vaulted ceiling stretches overhead like a frozen night sky, each carved star and twisting vine hiding a celestial secret. Among its forest of stone, one pillar stands out, the famous Apprentice Pillar, wrapped in spirals that don't just mimic Celtic knotwork, but mirror the precise path of the Northern Pole Star over a 26,000-year cycle. Look closer at the surrounding arches, and you'll find clusters of flowers that aren't random decorations. They're accurate renderings of the Pleiades star cluster, their petals arranged to match the relative brightness of each star as seen with the naked eye. Even the chapel's orientation is a clue. Its entrance aligns with the rising sun on the feast day of St. Matthew, but also with the position of Orion's belt during the winter solstice in the 1400s, the exact decade construction began. The carvings grow even more intriguing when you examine them under shifting light. At midday during the summer solstice, sunlight streams through a hidden slit in the clerestory, casting a beam that illuminates a series of carved cubes on the floor. These aren't just geometric patterns, they form a scaled-down model of the solar system, with each cube representing a planet's relative distance from the sun. The spacing matches proportions described in a controversial 12th century Arabic manuscript, the Book of the Fixed Stars, which placed the sun at the center of the cosmos centuries before Copernicus. Was this a daring nod to heliocentrism disguised as ornamentation? Beneath the chapel's floor lies another puzzle. Ground-penetrating radar has revealed a subterranean chamber, its walls lined with symbols matching those found in Templar ruins across Europe, a five-pointed star here, a labyrinthine sigil there. But the most startling discovery came when researchers compared these markings to medieval star charts. The chamber's layout mirrors the constellation Draco, with a central stone marker corresponding to Theban, the pole star of the ancient Egyptians. This wasn't just a storage vault, it was a three-dimensional star map, possibly used to teach navigation or track precession, the slow wobble of Earth's axis that shifts the celestial pole over millennia. The chapel's alleged Templar connections deepen the mystery. Among its hundreds of carvings, one shows a knight holding what appears to be a fragment of the true cross, but the wood grain is carved to resemble the Milky Way, with tiny drilled holes marking the positions of key stars along the galactic plane. Nearby, a relief of the Green Man, a pagan fertility symbol, has leaves arranged in Fibonacci spirals that match the orbital periods of Venus and Earth. These aren't just artistic flourishes, they're mathematical equations rendered in stone, blending sacred geometry with celestial mechanics. Why encode such advanced knowledge in a remote Scottish chapel? The answer may lie in its timing. Built in the shadow of the Templars' suppression, Roslyn could have served as a sanctuary for forbidden ideas. Its founder, William Sinclair, came from a family rumored to have ties to the order, and the chapel's design includes subtle nods to Templar sites like Toma in Portugal. Even the chapel's famed musical cubes, a mysterious stone blocks carved with geometric patterns, have been shown to resonate at frequencies matching the orbital harmonics of Mercury and Mars when struck. The most tantalizing clue might be hidden in plain sight. High on the chapel's east wall, a series of seemingly random dots have long baffled visitors. But when researchers overlaid them with a 14th century star chart from the Library of Alexandria, the dots aligned perfectly with the positions of 7 stars in the constellation Ursa Major on the spring equinox of 1390, the year the Sinclairs are said to have received a shipment of mysterious scrolls from the Mediterranean. Were these dots a receipt confirming the safe arrival of astronomical knowledge too dangerous to transport in writing? Standing in Roslyn's dim light, surrounded by stars carved in stone, you begin to sense the urgency behind these symbols. This wasn't just art, it was a contingency plan. If books burned, if scholars fell silent, the heavens would still speak through these vaulted arches and twisting pillars, waiting for a time when their messages could be read without fear. The real treasure of Roslyn Chapel isn't gold or relics, it's the night sky itself, preserved in sandstone, a celestial testament carved by hands that refused to let the stars go dark. Canterbury Cathedral rises from the earth like a frozen constellation, its spires and arches positioned with celestial precision. The moment you step through its great west door, you're walking an invisible line that stretches straight to the North Star. Polaris wasn't just a navigational aid for medieval sailors, it was the celestial anchor around which Canterbury's entire design revolved. The cathedral's central axis aligns so precisely with the pole star that on clear nights, its tower casts a shadow pointing due north, a feature builders likely used to calibrate their astronomical measurements. But the real magic happens during the feast of St. Thomas Becket, when the setting sun slides through a narrow clerestory window, striking a specific spot on the floor that also aligns with Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky. This double alignment, sun and star converging, was no accident. It marked both a sacred anniversary and a hidden tribute to the Egyptian New Year, when Sirius's heliacal rising signaled the Nile's life-giving floods. The celestial coding goes deeper than solar events. Canterbury's crypt contains a series of carved capitals depicting scenes from Becket's martyrdom, but look closer. Their arrangement mirrors the constellation Orion as it appeared on the night of his death in 1170. The three stars of Orion's belt align with three key scenes: the confrontation with the knights, the fatal blow, and the crown of martyrdom. Even the crypt's pillars are spaced at intervals, matching the angular distances between Orion's major stars when scaled to the cathedral's proportions. This wasn't just artistic symbolism, it was a sophisticated memorial, turning stone into a permanent star chart commemorating Canterbury's most famous tragedy. Pilgrims shuffling through the cathedral's nave may have unknowingly traced celestial pathways. The original medieval floor, now mostly worn away, featured a labyrinth with turns corresponding to the retrograde motion of Jupiter, a planet associated with kingship and divine justice. As worshippers knelt before Becket's shrine, their movements echoed the planet's looping dance through the Zodiac, physically enacting a cosmic metaphor for spiritual searching. The shrine's position itself held astronomical significance. It stood where the winter solstice sunrise beam intersected with a line drawn from the altar to a carving of the Virgin Mary, a configuration that simultaneously marked Christmas and the ancient festival of Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun. The most compelling evidence of Canterbury's celestial blueprint lies in its stained glass. The Great North Window, depicting the ancestors of Christ, contains a hidden celestial clock. Certain figures hold staffs or crowns at angles that, when sunlight strikes them, cast shadows pointing to specific dates in the liturgical calendar. But there's a second layer, the glass's chemical composition. Analysis reveals that the blue robes in the Jesse tree window contain cobalt particles identical in spectral signature to those found in medieval Islamic star maps, suggesting the glassmakers had access to Arabic astronomical treatises. One panel showing King David as a shepherd includes a tiny, almost invisible star cluster near his staff, an exact replica of the Pleiades as they appeared during the reign of Henry II, Becket's nemesis. Why embed such complex celestial messaging? Canterbury's status as England's premier pilgrimage site offers clues. With thousands of visitors arriving annually from across Europe, the cathedral functioned as a covert university, transmitting knowledge through architecture rather than risky manuscripts. A sailor from Venice might recognize the alignment of certain windows with the dog star, using it to calibrate his navigation skills. A scholar from Paris could spot the lunar cycle encoded in the choir screen's carvings, discreetly confirming astronomical theories banned at home. Even the cathedral's famous Black Prince shield, hanging high above the nave, doubles as a solar marker, its polished surface reflecting light to illuminate different zodiac signs throughout the year. The true stroke of genius lies in Canterbury's adaptability. Unlike static star charts, the cathedral's alignments shift with the centuries, its stones compensating for Earth's axial precession. The original builders knew Polaris wouldn't always be the North Star. They left adjustment marks in the Triforium gallery, allowing future masons to recalibrate alignments as the celestial pole gradually shifts toward Vega. This long-term thinking transforms Canterbury from a mere building into a living observatory, its stones whispering across 8 centuries that the heavens and earth are forever in conversation. Those who walk its aisles today aren't just following in pilgrims' footsteps, they're tracing lines drawn by starlight, stepping through a sacred geometry that binds human history to the infinite dance of the cosmos. The Church may have denounced astrology as the work of the devil, but look closely at the capitals of Rheims Cathedral, and you'll find the Zodiac carved in stone, Virgo holding wheat, Scorpio's tail coiled in warning, each sign positioned to align with sunlight on their corresponding dates in the liturgical calendar. This wasn't just decorative whimsy, it was a dangerous game of celestial hide and seek, where builders smuggled forbidden star lore into the very heart of Christian worship. Take the famous Labors of the Months medallions adorning so many cathedral portals. At first glance, they depict the agricultural year, sowing in spring, harvesting in autumn. But arrange them in a circle, and they transform into a zodiac wheel, their sequencing matching the sun's path through the ecliptic. A farmer might see practical advice for planting, while an initiate would recognize Taurus governing April's fertility or Leo presiding over August's heat. The survival of these coded systems hinged on dual meanings. Consider the stained glass windows at Burgess, where biblical scenes are framed by intricate borders of stars and flowers. To the faithful, they illustrate sacred stories. To those versed in astrology, the floral patterns mirror the exact positions of planets on key feast days. Venus's rose blooming where the planet stood during the Annunciation, Jupiter's oak leaf cluster marking its position at Epiphany. Even the colors held significance. The deep blue of Mary's robes wasn't just symbolic of purity, but matched the traditional hue of the moon's celestial mansion in medieval star charts. By layering astrological data beneath pious imagery, artisans ensured their knowledge would endure even as inquisitors burned astrology treatises in town squares. Some of the boldest encodings appear in the placement of saints themselves. At Amiens Cathedral, the statue of Saint Christopher, patron of travelers, stands precisely where the summer solstice sun strikes the north transept, a nod to his ancient association with Sirius, the star of the sea, guiding navigators. Nearby, St. Michael's sword points to the autumnal equinox sunset, aligning with his role as weigher of souls during Libra's season of balance. These weren't arbitrary artistic choices. They reflected a hidden tradition where Christian saints quietly absorbed the attributes of celestial beings, allowing pre-Christian star wisdom to continue under new names. The most audacious survival tactic lay in cathedral geometry itself. Builders used sacred proportions that doubled as astrological formulas. The width-to-length ratios of Chartres Cathedral's nave match the orbital period of Venus, while the height of Beauvais's choir corresponds to the synodic cycle of Mars. Such measurements could be defended as symbolic of divine harmony while secretly preserving exact astronomical data. Even the famed quincunx pattern, 4 points surrounding a center, common in cathedral floor designs, wasn't just a Christian cross in disguise. It replicated the ancient Babylonian system for charting the 4 fixed zodiac signs: Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius around the polar axis, a celestial map disguised as a decorative motif. How did these patterns evade detection for centuries? The answer lies in medieval Europe's fractured literacy. Most clergy couldn't read complex astrological texts, but even the illiterate could interpret visual symbols. A bishop might admire a window's colors without realizing its border plotted Mercury's retrograde path. A visiting noble could kneel before a saint statue, unknowingly paying homage to the star it secretly represented. The knowledge survived because it became invisible to those who would destroy it, like a message written in lemon juice, only visible when held to the light of understanding. Perhaps the ultimate irony is that the Church's own obsession with dates and astronomy inadvertently sheltered these heresies. Calculating Easter required tracking the moon, and predicting saints' feast days demanded solar observations. Builders could justify celestial alignments as practical necessities, their star charts masquerading as pious tools. The same rose window that marked the sun's entrance into Aries also helped determine Lent's movable dates. The gargoyle that lined up with Arcturus at midnight doubled as a weather vane. In a world where science and superstition blurred, the cathedrals became the perfect hiding place, their very sacredness protecting the secrets engraved in their stones. Today, as laser scans reveal these hidden correlations with increasing clarity, we're left to marvel at the medieval mind's ingenuity. These builders didn't just construct churches, they crafted celestial safes, locking away star knowledge in plain sight. Their legacy whispers to us from every aligned pillar, every zodiac hidden in plain sight, proving that sometimes the best way to preserve forbidden truth is to build it into something so magnificent, no one would dare tear it down. The apocalyptic scenes carved into cathedral tympanums aren't just fire and brimstone warnings, they're celestial records frozen in stone. At Vézelay Abbey in France, the famous Last Judgment portal shows stars tumbling from the heavens in precise clusters, their arrangement matching historical accounts of the Great Comet of 1066. That fiery visitor to our skies wasn't just a random spectacle. It arrived months before the Norman conquest, an event medieval chroniclers linked directly to the comet's ominous appearance. The Vézelay sculptors didn't merely illustrate Bible verses, they preserved a real astronomical phenomenon, embedding it into sacred art as both a religious symbol and a scientific record. Look closer at these apocalyptic carvings and patterns emerge. The falling stars at Autun Cathedral's west portal align with the trajectory of the 1054 supernova, an explosion so bright it was visible for weeks in broad daylight. Chinese astronomers documented it as a guest star, but European records are suspiciously sparse, except in stone. The Autun reliefs depict stars radiating jagged beams, identical to descriptions of supernova in recently rediscovered Arabic texts. This suggests cathedral artists had access to astronomical observations the church may have suppressed, hiding them in plain sight as biblical imagery. The most chilling examples appear in the Zodiac portal of St. Lazare Cathedral. Amidst its spiraling constellations, a panel shows the four horsemen riding beneath a sky cracked open, but the stars falling around them aren't random dots. They form the exact configuration of the Leonid meteor storm of 1136, an event so intense monks described it as the sky dissolving like parchment in flame. The carvers even included a tiny, twisted figure clutching a scroll, a possible nod to astronomer monks who risked recording such phenomena despite accusations of heresy. Why encode these events so meticulously? Medieval minds saw comets and supernova as divine Morse code celestial warnings of plagues, wars, or political upheavals. By embedding them into apocalyptic scenes, builders created a permanent early warning system. The supernova carving at Chartres' royal portal glows with golden stone at sunset every November 11th, the exact date it was first observed in 1054. This annual resurrection wasn't just artistry, it was a timed reminder, a celestial alarm clock set to ring across centuries. The deeper genius lies in how these carvings functioned as multi-layered messages. To the faithful, they depicted end times prophecies. To scholars, they preserved astronomical data. But to initiates, they may have held practical survival knowledge. The Strasbourg Cathedral's Apocalypse Rose includes a hidden band showing comet trajectories relative to constellations, information crucial for predicting future appearances. Lincoln Cathedral's Doom Screen secretly maps the periodicity of meteor showers using gilded star positions that align with medieval mathematical sequences. These stones whisper of a forgotten medieval reality, that cathedrals were cosmic bunkers, their walls engraved with survival guides for celestial catastrophes. The next time you stand before a tympanum of the Last Judgment, look past the angels and demons. Those falling stars above them might just be a medieval architect's way of saying, when the sky begins to crumble, remember, we saw it coming first. The Cathars saw the cosmos as a battleground, light against darkness, spirit against matter, and their lost star maps may have reflected this cosmic duality in ways that terrified the medieval church. Hidden in the seemingly orthodox carvings of southern French cathedrals like Albi and Toulouse, subtle anomalies hint at a suppressed celestial tradition. The Zodiac capitals at St. Etienne Cathedral, for instance, invert traditional sequences, placing Scorpio where Libra should reign, a disruption that mirrors Cathar teachings about the corruption of the material world. Even more telling are the star patterns carved into the cloister walls of Montségu's ruined fortress, where surviving fragments show constellations bisected by a jagged line, as if dividing the heavens into realms of light and shadow. What makes these carvings so radical isn't just their symbolism but their precision. At Bézier's Cathedral, partially destroyed during the Crusade against the Cathars, a surviving rose window encodes the positions of stars during the summer solstice of 1209, the exact year the Albigensian Crusade began. Its tracery doesn't just depict stars, it marks specific supernova and comets recorded in Cathar texts as signs of the broken firmament. Nearby, a capital showing the martyrdom of a heretic hides a celestial cipher. The victim's outstretched arms angle at 23.5 degrees, mirroring Earth's axial tilt, a number the Cathars associated with the fall of divine light into matter. The most compelling evidence lies in the alignment of these structures. While most medieval churches face east toward Jerusalem, Cathar-influenced churches like Loma's tilt slightly northeast, aligning with the star Vega during the feast of Mary Magdalene, a figure the Cathars revered as a wisdom bearer. Ground surveys reveal even more startling details. The foundations of raised Cathar strongholds often form geometric patterns matching the star of the Cathars, a mysterious 8-pointed symbol found in confiscated manuscripts. Modern astronomers have noted that these layouts mirror the positions of the Pleiades and Hyades clusters during the spring equinoxes of the 13th century, suggesting the sites doubled as open-air observatories. Why go to such lengths to hide star knowledge? The Cathars believed the material world was a prison. The stars themselves were fragments of trapped divine light, a heresy that threatened the Church's doctrine of creation. By encoding their cosmology into stone, they created a survival manual for the initiated. The Labyrinth at St. Nazaire Cathedral, for example, doesn't follow the usual unicursal path. Its dead ends and abrupt turns correspond to the false lights Cathars associated with demonic celestial bodies, while its center aligns with Polaris, their symbol for the true immaterial God. Pilgrims walking its path weren't just seeking penance, they were rehearsing a cosmic escape route. The Church's brutal suppression of the Cathars may have backfired in one cruel twist. The very crusaders who razed their cities often rebuilt atop the ruins, unknowingly preserving Cathar alignments. The nave of Narbonne Cathedral, constructed by their persecutors, sits atop an older Cathar chapel's foundations, and still channels the winter solstice sunrise through a narrow oculus to illuminate a carving of the Virgin. The light doesn't strike her face, though. It lands squarely on her womb, where a now-faded star map once glowed in gold leaf, the Cathars' final joke on their executioners, hiding their forbidden sky in the one place no inquisitor would dare destroy. The winding paths of medieval pilgrimage routes weren't just dirt trails, they were celestial highways, etched into the earth like mirrors of the night sky. Take the Camino de Santiago, where churches and cathedrals don't just mark physical rest stops but align with the Milky Way's luminous arc above. The star Deneb in the constellation Cygnus shines directly over Santiago de Compostela during peak pilgrimage season, as if the heavens themselves were guiding weary travelers to their destination. And it wasn't just metaphor. At Burgos Cathedral, a hidden channel in the north transept collects moonlight during specific lunar phases, casting a silver path along the floor that mirrors the Camino's next segment, a literal star map underfoot. These alignments went beyond coincidence. The route's key stopping points, Leon, Astorga, Ponferrada form a straight line matching the summer solstice sunrise, with each city's cathedral acting as a solar marker. Pilgrims walking east to west were unconsciously retracing the sun's journey, their physical progress synced with celestial time. Even the timing of pilgrimages held cosmic significance. The Feast of St. James on July 25th coincides with Sirius's heliacal rising, when the dog star first becomes visible before dawn, an event ancient cultures associated with spiritual rebirth. Was this scheduling accidental, or did medieval planners intentionally sync sacred journeys with celestial phenomena? The cathedrals themselves functioned as navigational instruments. Santiago's famous Botafumero, the massive swinging incense burner, doesn't just purify the air, its pendulum arc matches the apparent movement of Vega, the brightest star in Lyra, above the altar during August nights. At Leon Cathedral, a tiny hole in the vault projects a beam of sunlight onto a carved scallop shell, the pilgrim's symbol, precisely at midday during the spring equinox, confirming travelers were on schedule. These weren't just pretty effects, they were functional tools for a time when few could afford compasses or star charts, but the most profound connection might be spiritual. Pilgrims spoke of feeling drawn to Santiago as if by invisible forces, a sensation modern researchers attribute to the route's subtle energy alignments. The Camino's path follows ley lines that also track magnetic anomalies, creating natural navigation points enhanced by cathedral placements. When a weary pilgrim rounded a bend to see the spires of Roncesvalles Abbey framed by the constellation Orion, they weren't just seeing architecture, they were witnessing a deliberate collision of earth and sky, designed to make the cosmic feel within reach. Perhaps pilgrimage was medieval Europe's greatest act of participatory astronomy. Every footstep along those star-aligned paths, every glance toward a cathedral spire pointing like a celestial finger, turned ordinary travelers into living connectors between terrestrial and divine. The journey didn't just lead to relics, it replicated the soul's voyage through the spheres, with each cathedral portal representing a planetary gateway, each night's rest under the stars a step closer to enlightenment. The roads to Santiago, Rome, and Canterbury weren't merely routes to salvation, they were human-scaled models of the universe, inviting walkers to trace the heavens with their feet. The green man stares down from cathedral capitals with leaves sprouting from his mouth, vines twisting around his eyes, a face of foliage found from Chartres to Cologne. Most assume he's just a pagan holdover, a nod to nature's cycles, but tilt your head beneath his carved gaze and you might notice something strange. Those leaves aren't random. They spiral outward in precise Fibonacci sequences, the same mathematical pattern found in galaxy arms and sunflower seeds. At Norwich Cathedral, dawn light on the summer solstice strikes the green man's forehead, then traces each leafy tendril in order, as if illuminating a celestial map. Look closer and the astronomical connections multiply. The green man at Southwell Minster wears an oak crown with exactly 12 acorns mirroring the 12 houses of the Zodiac. His mouth, wide and gaping, aligns with the constellation Draco during the autumn equinox, as if swallowing the setting sun. Even his positioning in churches follows a pattern. He often appears near baptismal fonts or choir screens, transitional spaces that medieval scholars associated with the ecliptic, the sun's path across the sky. This isn't just nature worship, it's sophisticated sky lore disguised as decoration. The real clue lies in his multicultural echoes. Long before Christian carvers sculpted him in stone, similar leafy faces adorned Babylonian star charts as representations of the constellation Orion. Celtic tribes depicted him with hawthorn branches marking lunar nodes, while Hindu temples showed him as Ashvatha, his limbs the cosmic tree linking earth and heavens. This recurring motif suggests something profound. The green man wasn't just a local superstition, but a shared astronomical shorthand. His foliage might represent the star forest of the Milky Way. His ever-renewing leaves the cyclical dance of planets and seasons. At Lichfield Cathedral, the green man holds the key to a deeper mystery. His carved eyes, hollowed out, once held glass orbs that refracted light onto the floor at specific times. Modern reconstructions show these projections trace the movements of Venus over an 8-year cycle, the planet's recurring path forming a pentagram in the sky, a pattern long associated with divine femininity. Was this leafy face actually a celestial calendar, tracking the morning star for agricultural or ritual purposes? The Church's tacit approval of such imagery hints at a quiet compromise, a way to keep vital sky knowledge alive under the veil of myth. Perhaps the boldest evidence comes from Roslyn Chapel, where the green man shares a pillar with carvings of maize, a plant unknown in Europe when the chapel was built. His leaves here interlock with stars from the New World constellation Luthu, the Inca Southern Cross, suggesting builders had access to transatlantic star lore. Even his expression changes with the light. At midday, he smiles. By twilight, his features twist into the grimace of the constellation Ophiuchus, the serpent-bearer. This duality, life and death, growth and decay, mirrors the ancient belief that stars both created and consumed matter in an endless cycle. So next time you encounter this leafy enigma in a cathedral's shadows, don't just see a forest spirit. Look deeper. Those spiraling vines might chart the procession of equinoxes. Those stone eyes could be fixed on a comet's return, the green man's real secret. He was never just about spring's return. He was a medieval astronomer's manifesto, rooted in stone to whisper across centuries that the cosmos, too, is alive, growing, and forever renewing itself. Deep within the labyrinthine foundations of Europe's great cathedrals, behind walls thick enough to mute even the echo of footsteps, lie chambers that defy simple explanation. These aren't crypts for relics or storerooms for vestments. They're celestial vaults, their ceilings carved with constellations, their narrow windows positioned to capture slivers of starlight on precise nights of the year. Beneath the nave of Chartres, a low-ceilinged room known as the Crypt of the Stars bears a domed roof etched with the positions of the Pleiades as they appeared during the cathedral's consecration in 1260. Step inside during the winter solstice, and a shaft of moonlight pierces a slit in the wall, illuminating a single carved star at the dome's apex, Theban, the ancient pole star, revered by Egyptian astronomers millennia before Christianity's rise. Similar chambers hide in plain sight across the continent. Beneath Canterbury Cathedral's cloisters, a circular room with 12 niches, one for each zodiac sign, contains grooves in the floor that channel rainwater into patterns mirroring the Milky Way during heavy storms. At Burgos in Spain, a secret annex off the sacristy houses an armillary sphere carved into the floor, its rings aligned to track Jupiter's moons, an astronomical feat Galileo wouldn't publish for another 3 centuries. These spaces weren't just architectural quirks. They were functional observatories, their existence hinting at a parallel tradition where clergy and craftsmen collaborated to keep celestial knowledge alive under the Church's unwitting protection. The rituals conducted in these chambers remain shrouded in speculation, but clues linger in marginalia and masons' marks. A 14th-century manuscript from Durham Cathedral's archives describes an initiation rite called the Star Walk, where novices blindfolded themselves and traced the curves of a floor mosaic representing the constellation Hercules, guided only by the sound of a chanting priest. At Rheims, grooves worn into the stones of a hidden upper chamber suggest repeated use of a mechanical orrery, a model of the solar system, possibly for teaching the motions of planets to select scholars. The most tantalizing evidence comes from Strasbourg, where a star chamber's walls bear soot marks from candles arranged in patterns matching the astronomical liturgy described in condemned Gnostic text ceremonies that invoked celestial guardians at specific alignments. Why such secrecy? The answer may lie in the chamber's celestial alignments. The star vault beneath Cologne Cathedral, accessible only by a trapdoor in the choir, features an oculus that frames the star Regulus every August 5th, the feast day of the Virgin Mary's Ascension, but also the date of the ancient Egyptian festival of Soptit, when Sirius first reappeared in the dawn sky. This fusion of Christian and pre-Christian sky lore would have been heresy if performed openly, yet the very stones suggest these rituals weren't fringe practices but systematic observations. Where patterns on the kneelers in Wells Cathedral's star chamber indicate regular use by multiple observers, while grooves in the walls at York Minster align with viewing angles for tracking lunar standstills, events occurring only every 18.6 years. The most compelling testimony to these chambers' purpose lies in what they lacked: Christian iconography. Unlike every other cathedral space dripping with saints and scripture, these rooms bore only celestial imagery, carved star maps, zodiac bands, and geometric patterns matching Islamic astrolabe designs. This absence speaks volumes. In a world where the church controlled the narrative of creation, these chambers were sanctuaries for a different kind of worship, not of deities, but of the mathematical perfection of the cosmos itself. When a beam of winter sunlight strikes the meridian line in Salisbury's hidden observatory chamber, illuminating a carved phrase in Latin, lux in tenebris, light in darkness, it feels less like a devotional statement and more like a defiant creed, etched in stone by hands that refuse to let the stars be forgotten. Modern technology is revealing even more startling details. Laser scans of Amiens Cathedral's foundations detected a previously unknown cavity beneath the high altar, a star-shaped chamber with acoustics engineered to amplify specific frequencies when certain constellations were overhead. At Santiago de Compostela, thermal imaging exposed heat patterns suggesting medieval builders embedded metal rods in the walls of a sealed crypt, possibly to create magnetic alignments with Polaris. These discoveries hint at a sophistication we're only beginning to understand, where architecture, astronomy, and sacred geometry merged into a single discipline. The true function of these chambers may have been multifaceted: part classroom, part observatory, part sacred theater where the cosmos itself performed for those initiated enough to read its script. As restoration work continues in cathedrals across Europe, each new discovery peels back another layer of this celestial conspiracy. Behind a loosened stone at Lincoln, a cache of glass prisms designed to refract starlight. Beneath a worn step at Notre-Dame, a depression holding mercury, a substance alchemists associated with planetary energy. These aren't random artifacts. They're the tools of a parallel science that thrived in the shadows, its practitioners cloaking their work in piety while keeping their eyes and their instruments fixed firmly on the heavens. The star chambers stand as silent witnesses to a medieval world far more nuanced than history books suggest, where faith and astronomy didn't clash but conspired, building vaults not just for prayer but for the eternal dance of light above. The star maps hidden in medieval cathedrals are more than just architectural quirks. They're a testament to humanity's enduring quest to understand the cosmos. These soaring stone structures, often seen as monuments to faith, were also carefully crafted celestial observatories, their spires pointing not just to heaven but to specific stars, their stained glass windows filtering light into constellations, their labyrinths tracing the paths of planets. The builders who embedded this knowledge into stone were doing something revolutionary. They were safeguarding wisdom that could have been lost to time, persecution, or shifting dogmas. In an era when certain astronomical ideas could be deemed heretical, these artisans and architects found a brilliant loophole. They turned entire buildings into vessels of forbidden knowledge, disguising star charts as sacred art, encoding planetary motions into geometric patterns, and aligning chapels with solstice sunrises. What's truly remarkable is how these celestial secrets endured. While books burned and scholars fell silent, the cathedrals stood unshaken, their star maps legible to anyone who knew how to read them. The rose window at Chartres didn't just depict biblical scenes, it froze a snapshot of the night sky as it appeared in the year 1260. The gargoyles of Notre-Dame weren't mere decorations, they marked the positions of key stars in the Draco constellation. Even the floors under pilgrims' feet held hidden designs, labyrinths that doubled as solar calendars, their winding paths mirroring the retrograde motion of Mars. These weren't accidents, they were acts of quiet defiance, a way to ensure that even if the church suppressed certain ideas, the heavens themselves would remain visible, etched into the very bones of these sacred spaces. This legacy challenges how we think about history's so-called Dark Ages. Far from being a time of ignorance, the medieval period was one of ingenious synthesis, where ancient astronomy, Islamic mathematics, and Christian artistry colluded in stone. The same architects who designed vaulted ceilings to inspire awe also calculated their curves to reflect the golden ratio, a mathematical constant found in spiral galaxies and sunflower seeds. The masons who carved zodiac signs into choir stalls weren't just decorating, they were preserving Babylonian star lore under the guise of pious imagery. These cathedrals became the ultimate safeguard, too grand to destroy, too sacred to question, yet hiding celestial truths in plain sight. Today, as laser scans and spectral imaging reveal even more of these hidden codes, we're left with a profound realization. These builders weren't just constructing churches, they were creating time capsules designed to outlast empires and outwit censors. Their star maps were messages across centuries, waiting for a time when humanity would once again look up and wonder. Next time you step inside a medieval cathedral, pause for a moment. Let your eyes trace the ribs of the vaults overhead. They might just be tracing the path of a long-forgotten comet. Study the play of light through a stained glass window. Those colors could be mapping the orbit of Venus. The real magic lies in knowing that these secrets were always there, whispering to those who dared to see beyond the surface. If these celestial mysteries spark your curiosity, you're not alone. The conversation continues in the comments below. Share your own experiences or questions about these architectural marvels. And for more journeys into history's hidden corners, subscribe and join us as we keep unraveling the past, one stone-carved star at a time.